Hey y'all, welcome to the stream. We're going to get started in a few minutes to give everybody else a chance to get into the stream, but if you can see and hear me, put in the comments where you're from. Hello, can anybody hear me? Hello, is anybody there? Thank you, Samantha, for saying that you can hear me. All right, so it looks like there are 6 people registered, but only 2 people in right now, so maybe I'll just wait 1 or 2 more minutes while I fix something real quick. Oh crap, no, that is not what I meant to do. But it looks like I'm about to start anyways. I mean, it's 2:02, so I'll give people 1 more minute to get in. So, how are you guys doing today? Pretty good? Or just at least not bad considering? Doing all right? That's good. All right is better than not doing fine at all. I mean, something. Staying at home is pretty boring. I agree. I want to go somewhere, do something, or just, not sit in the same room all day, every day. I definitely feel that. But now is 2:03, so guess I'm just gonna get started now. If anybody else comes in, that'll be great. But Samantha and Zoe, it might just be you two today. All right, so today we're going to be reviewing 2017 APES FRQs hosted by yours truly, Harrison Burnside. So let's get started. So this is the weekly stream calendar at Fiveable. Hopefully, if you're in other AP classes, you watch those streams too. This is just the basic one, so it doesn't have any of the cram session time or any of the daytime streams, the Q&As, the FRQs like we're doing right now. But it just has, the basic Fiveable evening streams that we've had since the dawn of time. It looks like we have 2 more people dropping in. Welcome, Tanya, WT. Tanya, I've seen you a few times. Troublemaker. Gosh. All right, so as always, follow Think Fiveable on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and also TikTok. Samantha, I said TikTok before you put it in the chat, so I got it right. So, moving on. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the 2020 exam, the FRQs. We're going to take a look at something called the CED, the course and exam description, where I'll show you the colorful fun parts. And then we're going to look at the questions from 2017 that actually apply to today's exam. Then we'll have time to go over tips to look at the APES FRQs, especially the specific ones for this year. All right. If you have any questions any questions about what we're doing, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, put them in the ask question section. Also, don't hesitate to go to my poll so I can know what we're doing. Final big thing today. Number 1. All right. So 2020 exam. I actually stole this graphic from somewhere else. I think it was Ms. Fitchman's 2016 FRQ review stream that was last Thursday. I believe, it was last Thursday. She had a stream that went over to 2016 FRQ. She focused on the design experiment and investigation FRQ, which is going to be 25 minutes of your exam, which is going to be at 60%. And today I'm going to focus more on the analyze the environmental problem and propose a solution, which is a shorter FRQ. But if you want tips on that, definitely check the Verge 2016 stream. That was last week. The replay should be uploaded, although check after if it's not. But I'm also posting the 2018 and 2019 FRQ reviews next Wednesday and the Wednesday after that. So you'll see a lot of things. Don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but you can decide. So your exam is going to be May 18th. It's going to be 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. So it's going to be one of the later exams. Hopefully you're not an international student. I know there are some students who are travel. One of them lives in South Korea, and she's going to take her exams at like 3 a.m. 3 a.m. I believe. So hopefully that's not your situation. But you probably already know there's going to be 2 FRQs on this year's exam. If your teacher hasn't already told you, they're going to be the design and investigation one, which is talking about the principles of like the scientific method, hypothesis, control group, things like that. And it's also going to be talking about like, what do we need to look at, what's the experiment, what's important to fix in the environment. But the second FRQ, the shorter one, is analyze an environmental problem and propose a solution, which is going to be more about thinking about solving problems that we have with the environment focuses on. I just realized these slides are way too small, so I'm going to make them bigger so you can actually read this graphic real quick if it would work with me. There we go. So hopefully now I can actually read that graphic, take a picture if you want it. But the exams this year will be open notes, but you have to be really careful. You definitely don't want to be caught cheating, plagiarizing, anything like that for the college board. You get scores canceled, and then immediate notification to any college that you're applying to that you're done so. So don't cheat, but use your notes. Don't copy directly because sometimes when you're doing notes, you copy things down from the textbook, and you definitely don't want to put that in your FRQ response. So just be careful. But honestly, you might not have a lot of extra time to look at your notes, so I would maybe only spend 2-3 minutes, especially on the second FRQ that's shorter. Like, don't spend more than 2 minutes looking at your notes. For the design and investigation, if you're looking at notes, they should probably be on like scientific method, hypothesis, how to write that fully, what a control group is, dependent independent variables, explanatory response variables, things like that. So definitely go watch the 2016 FRQ stream replay to learn more about design and investigation. I haven't looked at the 2018 or 2019 FRQ reviews yet, so I don't know if design and investigation will be on those, but I will figure out a way to work it in somehow. But one more thing you probably already know, the exam will only be 1 through 7, so it's not going to have terrestrial pollution, and it's not going to have change, which is kind of weird because Unit 8 is mostly covered in the 7 a little in the earlier units, eutrophication, which you kind of already learned that. Also, Unit 9, it's kind of like the whole APES course, it's like summarized in one unit. It's all about like global change, like proposing environmental solutions. So kind of weird that they kind of ironic actually that they added those 2, but those are kind of the ones that you don't even really need to cut because they're kind of like the summary of the course, like the summation. But it's just my opinions. You know, they don't have to be my opinion, so people will get into content. Let's stop interjecting my opinion. So this is the thing called the CED. It's short for course exam description. So for APES, there are 7 units that will be on the test this year, units 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you can see here that in your course, there are certain like science practices and big ideas that your teacher's supposed to teach and like follow the course around, like make connections between different things. But today I just want to look at 2 of the science practices. So the titles of the FRQs this year are design and investigation, which is about like testing things, making experiments, environmental principles, scientific method. We also have analyze an environmental problem and propose advise an environmental problem and propose a solution. So that was going to be more about like looking at environmental solutions. So actually, the CED right here is going to be a little cheat sheet for what you should definitely spend time studying. So this year, topic 4, topic 7, experiments and environmental solutions, kind of have several types of FRQs they're going to get. So on your AP classroom, there are some practice FRQs that actually fall into these categories too. If you look at the topics, I asked my friends to fill up their AP classroom grades, and boom, I was right. So there's no guarantee that something with these numbers is going to be your FRQ, but there's more than 50% chance that your FRQs are going to have. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me? I'm sorry. Is there a problem? The audio is cutting out a little bit. Let me see if I can fix that there. Okay. That's not good. Give me 1 second to try to fix this, guys. I'm going to leave, but I'm still here. I'm going to try to reset my mic. Hopefully that works better. Hello? All right. Okay. Is my audio better? Is my mic better? I really hope that it is. Yes? Okay. Perfect. Okay. So did you guys get the gist of what I was saying earlier, or should I go back? Okay, you think you got the gist? Okay. So maybe I'll just restart talking about the CED here. So the course and exam description, it has all these different scientific practices that these two, science experiments, which is 4, and environmental solutions, which is number 7, are kind of similar to the titles over here. You have design and investigation, which kind of pairs with scientific experiments, and then you have environmental solutions right there that kind of pairs with analyze an environmental problem and propose a solution. Also, I really like that the colors are the same. That's kind of coincidental, but yellow, yellow, green, green. Maybe if you save that graphic, that's a helpful way to help you remember. All right. So in certain units, there are different, things that you're supposed to learn, like key topics that have these different numbers. So this is not really zoomed in, so I think I'm going to pull up the course and exam description again. Give me about 3 seconds. You can count 1, 2, 3, and my screen should be sharing with you now. So we're going to look at this ourselves because that picture is kind of small and blurry. If my computer doesn't crap out on me, that's always an important thing. So if you guys want to look at this later, you can always Google AP Environmental Science CED PDF. And I think it's like usually going to be the first result that pops up on Google that says PDF right here. If you click on it, it's going to take you to the link. My Wi-Fi is just not that great right now because there are 4 people in my house using it. But you see here it has this nice cover with these like buffalo, bison grazing, and then you have a hazy city in the background. Kind of some symbolism there with the course. But if you scroll down to like page, what is this, 3, 4-ish? 4, and you click on course at a glance, it's going to bring you to this nice, colorful thing that might be a poster that your teacher has in your room right now. Well, except you're not going to teachers' rooms right now. So, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. So, as I was saying, there are these scientific practices, which is number 4, scientific experiments, and number 7, environmental solutions, that kind of might help you guide your study on, what you should be looking at for the exam. So, I can't guarantee there's no like 100% probability, but things that are in those categories that the College Board and AP tells you should study these with these ideas in mind, I mean, that could definitely be a possibility of what's on the exam. So I would maybe make sure that you know exactly how to explain these topics and, think about how the FRQ revolves around these topics. So first, I'm going to look at number 4, scientific experiments. So first things first, when we look at units 1 and 2, you don't see any numbers 4 or 7. So that doesn't mean that the FRQ can't be on units 1 and 2, but you also see a lot of things that are in units 1 and 2 in the later units, especially in unit 5. In unit 5, land use, you'll see a lot of things about different ecosystems, biomes. You'll have ecosystem services might show up again in unit 5 in your course. Adaptations, definitely. Succession is talked about a lot in APES. But the only things that you're not going to see again are going to be like the biogeochemical cycles, which is like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, water cycle, primary productivity. You're probably not going to see those things again. So in my humble opinion of not an AP reader or grader, you probably won't have one of your FRQs be on biogeochemical cycles or primary productivity. Unless they find some weird way to throw it in, and then I'm 100% wrong, and I've told you to study the wrong things. So always make sure you're studying everything, reviewing everything, but definitely keep an eye out for these things that I'm about to mention. So you start seeing the numbers 4 and 7 when you get into units 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But this year, back to my slides over here, The second FRQ is analyze an environmental problem and propose a solution. This is not the version of the FRQ with math. So it is pretty safe to say that this year on your AP exam, you probably won't have to do dimensional analysis. You might have to do like simple addition, subtraction type things, but they're probably not going to make you do dimensional analysis. They're probably not going to make you do like really heavy math calculations with exponents and, subscripts and things like that. It's probably only going to be addition, subtraction, maybe some easy multiplication, division, maybe some population math. But besides that, there will probably not be any energy math. Energy math is like the hardest math kind of in APES, so you probably won't get that. But looking back at units 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 that will be on your exam, you can see that you first see the number 7 right here with human population dynamics, which is so 7 is environmental solutions. So you could see an FRQ for proposed environmental solution about human population dynamics. And that's just a fancy way of saying like humans, it's mainly talking about the problems with overpopulation, If any of your teachers have ever used the acronym HIPPO or HIPPOC, something like that, that talks about human population dynamics. So make sure you do look at things like what happens with overpopulation, how does that relate to agriculture, how does human population increase or decrease, relate to things like carrying capacity, crude birth rate, crude death rate. Make sure you know how to analyze those kind of things. But looking at number 7 again, we have El Nino and La Nina. So when you're studying that, just make sure you know how they work. Make sure you know what the opposites are of El Nino and La Nina and like the normal patterns in the Pacific Ocean. I'm not going to lie, Unit 4 is not like my best APES topic, but I'm going to do my best to help you. Don't ask me questions about soil in the atmosphere because, hint, hint, I probably don't know. All right, but don't tell my boss that. So we see number 4 in Unit 4 for the first time, which is going to be scientific experiments. So you could have a design and investigation question based on soil formation, erosion, or soil composition. So they might have you look at things like a soil triangle. They might ask you what kind of soil is best for agriculture, which would be loam. They might ask you how could you measure the quality of soil. You could say like the field test. You could do soil separation. You could do using the soil triangle. They might ask you to design an experiment talking about the properties of soil. That could definitely be, pH test for soil could also definitely be a thing. So you want to know different like tests that you can run, especially for proposed environmental solution. So some of the different tests you can run are like for anything like water, soil, I guess those are the only 2 things, but you could run like a pH test. You could run I can't think of anything else, but you guys definitely can. Like you could run a fecal coliform test, if you guys know what that is, but that's more of a Unit 8 topic. So turbidity is definitely a Unit 4 topic, how clear things are. You could do albedo tests for like land, how reflective is it? That's also a Unit 4 thing. But those are just, make sure you review your notes for Unit 4, especially about soil properties. Okay, but then so that's it for Unit 4. They probably won't have an El Nino, La Nina FRQ because in my opinion, like that's not the most important thing that you learn in the APES course. If they get to choose 2 topics in the whole course, personally, I would not choose El Nino. Weather is not the most important thing at APES. I could see them doing a soil FRQ. They have not done a ton. They have done a few, but not a ton in recent years, so that's definitely something that's fair game. But when we get into Unit 5, land and water use, this one is the big unit. This one has 17 key topics. Oh my gosh, that's way too many. Unit 5 is probably the unit that took you the longest to cover in APES. Your teacher might have broken it up into 2 different units, like water use and then land use. But here we're looking at the different land and water uses. We're looking at a lot of agriculture. We're looking at a lot of things that are related to fishing, but then we're also looking at urbanization and sustainability in this unit. So with number 7, you have 2 things about agriculture, irrigation methods, and pest control methods. So they could ask you propose an environmental solution FRQ about pesticides, integrated pest management, also known as IPM. They could ask you about drip irrigation, no-till agriculture. Those could definitely be topics on your proposed environmental solution FRQ. And those actually are kind of, agriculture could definitely be a proposed environmental solution FRQ. It could probably be, in my opinion, it's probably going to be an agriculture or human population FRQ. Like, those are high likelihoods of things that it could be. You also have things like overfishing. So you need to know about like solutions like aquaculture for overfishing. You should also know about mining. Think about surface mining, subsurface mining, strip mining, all the different types of mining. Also know about acid deposition, acid rain. Those could definitely be asked about. Impacts of urbanization. Urbanization could really connect to a human population FRQ. So just know if any of you guys have taken human geography before, you definitely know some things about human population and then urbanization. And down here we have integrated pest management again, which is, again, the agriculture pesticides practices. Then you have sustainable agriculture, aquaculture, like I already said, and then forestry. So really, it probably won't be specifically on one of these topics. It'll probably relate to another. So definitely, think about unsustainable fishing practices, what bad comes with urbanization, what bad comes with population growth, and agriculture in general. And then we get down to Unit 6 and 7. So in Unit 6, we have a few things about solutions with fossil fuels, energy from biomass, dams, hydroelectric power, wind energy. But honestly, because there probably won't be math in your FRQs, I feel like it'd be so hard to do a proposed environmental solution for energy. I mean, definitely study the energy unit because there's a lot of stuff in there besides the energy math, but proposing solutions about energy uses, they've used that FRQ a few times in the past, I believe, and it's kind of redundant, A. And B, to propose a solution, it kind of involves a lot of calculations with energy, but also just kind of still study it, but just know that it probably won't be on your AP exam, if I had to guess. And then the last unit, air pollution, Unit 7. It doesn't really look like there are a ton of 7s in this unit. You could think reduction of air pollution, but not really a ton of proposed environmental solutions in here. Here, you might be designing an experiment about air pollution, an experiment about CO2 and particulate matter. It could be an experiment about acid rain, and I could definitely see them doing an FRQ about combining acid rain and then mining, because when you mine and strip mine, you could have acid deposition, which is when you have the acid leakage from mining to break away the rock that you don't want. You have it run off into lakes from excess rain, and then when it gets pulled back into the atmosphere from evaporation, that SOx, SOx, becomes H2SO4, which is an acid. And when you have that acid, that means you're going to have acid rain, and you could probably make an experiment about acid rain and have, testing the pH of it. You could test how much acid rain, what effect it has on plants, different types of those things. So honestly, speculation is kind of fun. But if you want to look at this again, Google AP Environmental Science CED PDF, and then it'll pull up this. So look for definitely things with 4 and 7 to study, because those are things that could definitely be fair game on your FRQs. But enough about that. Let's actually get into reviewing a few FRQs like we were supposed to do in this stream. I just felt like it was kind of important to go over, what kind of things could definitely be on your exam, have a strong possibility. Kind of highlighted everything here. In the slides should be in the resources section of this stream on the Fiveable stream page that I've linked in the call to action, like green button thing there. So you can look at these at a later time. But I have definitely said that 4 and 7 could be really important units to study for the design and investigation FRQ, which is going to be 60% of your exam score. So before we get into reviewing the FRQs, I wanted to look at the poll results and see what you guys wanted to do, because I'm definitely going to be talking through the FRQs, but you guys want to write responses together, it looks like. It looks like all 100% of the votes are in that category. So what I'm going to do is, if you click on that Fiveable stream page, big green button, I can't really point to it because like you can't see, I'm going to try to point to it, but like there, I think it's like right there in relation to me. If you guys see that big Fiveable stream page button, and you click on that, what it could do is take you to the stream page. Maybe that's where you already are watching me, hopefully. If you scroll down to like almost the bottom part of the page, you can see where it says discuss. Click on that. And then after you click on discuss, it should take you to a page that looks like this. When you guys see this page, like hop back into this tab and say, yeah, I see what you're saying. You know, I can see it. I found what button you're talking about. Something to know that I still have you guys with me. Gotcha. Great. Looks like Emmeline got it. Is that your name? Emmeline? Did I pronounce that right? Well, I'm waiting on people to do stuff. I can work on names. Let's see. I know Samantha's in here. Tanya. Emmeline. I hope I pronounced that right. If I didn't, like, put a phonetic pronunciation. Emmeline. Emmeline. Got it. Emmeline. All right. So we have Samantha, Emmeline, Tanya, Zoe, and WC. All right. So when we look at this page, I have linked the slides again here that you can click on that I'm going through. If it would load. Like, this is what I'm going through right here, the slides from this stream. But after the stream, I challenge you guys to go look at the slide that I'm about to show you right here and try to write an FRQ response for just parts of D and E here. This one is kind of a partial FRQ for proposed environmental solution, and I can give you guys feedback on this, you know, this partial FRQ that I put here. I'll give you partial feedback until next Wednesday when we meet again for another FRQ review stream. So part D is kind of explain how the characteristics can make these mammals prone to extinction, and then discuss conservation strategies that could be implemented to prevent the extinction. So this one's kind of Unit 3, Unit 5-ish topic, but it's about case strategists. It's about conservation strategies and extinction. So I hope that you guys have all talked about those. If you haven't, then don't do the FRQ then. But if you do, then, you know, try the FRQ. I can give you guys feedback until next Wednesday. I'll try to check it like every other day. I'll tag you guys in the feedback so you get a notification to your Fiveable account. But definitely try to do that if you have the time, of course. But the main FRQ that I want to look at today is, I skipped all the way to the scoring guides. It's a full proposed environmental solution FRQ. So those like little things that I've highlighted in yellow here, like those boxes that I put, are things that I want to go over that are really like the proposed environmental solution portion of this FRQ. Because your whole FRQ format is different than they've had in previous years. Sorry, I need some water. Keep my hydro flask with the Fiveable sticker on it. All right. So looking at this FRQ, it says Haiti shares a border with the Dominican Republic on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola. Tons of wrong pronunciations and stutters and everything in that sentence. Oh my gosh. Let's keep going. The border between the two countries can be seen using satellite images because of the severe deforestation in Haiti. So that's your whole background. So basically, you see two countries share a border and something about severe deforestation. So here it says, provide one reason why deforestation commonly occurs in less developed countries such as Haiti. Does anybody have any ideas that could help you answer that question? Like, you don't have to put out a fully fleshed paragraph. You don't have to do any of that. You kind of just have to tell me, like, Any ideas? So we have, Tanya says, sell resources. So we could expand that into a whole response to this FRQ by saying, in developing countries, people cut down trees and forests, or deforestation occurs for people to get the timber to be used to make lumber for things like burning fires, biomass. You could also talk about energy from biomass. In developing countries, a lot of times energy from biomass is used and wood is burned because it's a cheap fuel. The US used to use energy from biomass instead of coal because it was cheaper and that's what we had. That used to be the only source of fuel, like burning wood for energy. So I'm sorry, I skipped Samantha's. Samantha said deforestation for agriculture. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to expand on that a little bit more, but you could definitely say, like, we use the land for agriculture and we need to plow through the trees, clear cut to make sure that we have access to fields that are arable land that the forest used to be on. Tanya's kind of expanded for sell resources into sell the wood for money because they don't have very many industrial jobs. Money, not many. Sorry about that. Also, wood for housing materials. Yeah. I mean, think about how much wood Habitat for Humanity uses to build their houses. Whew. I mean, I think they would have to clear cut an entire forest. I don't know, whatever. So this is the one that I'm going to kind of walk you through. 2, describe one realistic strategy to reduce deforestation in a less developed country. So, peep the word realistic. So, on your APES proposed an environmental solution FRQ, they're probably going to include the word realistic when they say realistic strategy or realistic solution, because they want the things you say to actually happen. You can't just say, propose legislation that bans deforestation forever, and anybody who is caught cutting down trees and forests will be sentenced to 100 years in jail and possibly be sentenced to capital punishment, death. Like, you can't say that. Sounds like a great idea in theory, but you can't say that. That's not a realistic solution. Not no optimism, but just like something that can actually happen. Like, not that it's no optimism, like this whole FRQ proposed environmental solution is all about optimism, but you don't really want to, focus on the big things. You want to focus on like regulating countries and taxing them, or you could come up with a strategy that has require companies that cut down trees to plant more tree seeds for each, plant 2 trees for every tree taken down. That could definitely be a realistic strategy. But remember, you have to describe it to get full points. In AP Environmental Science, many of you might not think that it's like the hardest AP Science class. I've definitely heard that before. But with FRQs, as opposed to the other AP Sciences, especially the ones with math, they're a lot more stringent on descriptions and explanations. So if you see the word describe and you just give, like, if you just provide the reason, like, you don't get points. Like, for you to get points in APES FRQs, you have to, like, fully describe everything. Like, it's all or nothing. That's the hardest thing about APES FRQs. If you just provide a reason but you don't know how to explain it, you're not getting the points. I mean, if it just says provide or identify, then you're good just providing the reason. But if it says describe, explain, discuss, you better be writing a paragraph to answer that. Well, not a whole paragraph, but like 3 to 4 sentences fully explaining what you're thinking and how that would work. Because they only give you the points if you can pair your identification with description and APES. And I think we're going to see that in the different scoring guidelines that we're going to look at later. But yeah, so now that we've kind of like tried to answer part A with me, let's look at the rubric for the College Board. So we have me zooming in so you guys can actually read it, because I know that my Wi-Fi isn't great, so your picture's kind of probably blurry. So provide one reason why deforestation happens. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed comments. Yeah, Zoe Richardson says plant 2 trees for every tree taken down. Perfect. Tanya says conquer them, enforce your will upon them, for example, would probably not work. Yeah, no, realistic again. Zoe says, unfortunately, LOL. So Tanya gave a good, structural thing. Identify, provide equals 1 sentence. Describe, discuss, explain equals 2 to 4 sentences. I don't love saying you need to write 4 sentences to answer this FRQ, because the person who wrote 4 simple sentences that says, enact a law about deforestation, period. This law should prevent people from cutting down trees, period, is not the same kind of sentence writer as the person who writes in 1 sentence, a law that you could create to prevent deforestation in developing countries could be to blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here's what the rubric says for parts I and double I. A reason could be that converting forests into agricultural land, so perfect. Samantha, you get the point for that one. Using trees, charcoal for fuel or source of income, perfect. Tanya, I think you said that one. I said protecting forests through regulations is less common in developing countries, so they might not have a lot of laws. They don't care about climate. They care about getting their economy started. Harvesting timber for use as building materials, that's that Habitat for Humanity example that I talked about. And then there are some other examples too. But what I want to touch on this part is it says provide one reason. So you don't have to explain it. Like if you read the parentheses right here, it just says a point for a reason. Why deforestation? It doesn't say to explain or describe. It just says the reason has to be listed. So Tanya says, I have to do that. Yeah. Yeah, I got building materials and source of income. Yeah, see? But remember, with FRQs, they only grade your first response. So if you give 2 reasons and you hope that like one of them, you think that one of them isn't good enough, so you want to give 2 just in case, they only grade your first response. So make sure you write 1 response and make it your best. So if you could definitely say something about using building materials to create houses for impoverished people, perfect. That's your answer. Don't also include that selling wood could be a source of income for timber and lumber companies. 1 thing. If it asks for 1 reason, provide 1 reason. All right. And then the second verb is describe. Describe, describe, describe. That means write more than 1 sentence. So describe one realistic strategy to reduce deforestation in the less developed country. So here it says 1 point for a correct description of a realistic strategy. You only get 1 point for this section of the FRQ. It doesn't say if you get a point for the identification and a point for the description. It's just 1 point for describe. So you have to make sure you have a well thought out description and explanation of what your, strategy will be. So enact and enforce laws or regulations that restrict cutting of trees, sure, but realistic. It can't be that the sentence for cutting down a tree is 100 years in prison. You could say there are mandatory fines, things like that. Encourage sustainable agriculture, forestry programs. So that could definitely be what Zoe said about plant 2 trees for every tree taken down. Introduce more efficient cooking methods that reduce wood as a source of fuel. So when I was talking about wood for biomass fuel earlier, this could be something to curb that. You could say, here are some hot plates that you can use to cook your food instead of burning wood and chopping down more trees. Alternate building materials, like in the US, we don't use a lot of wood to build houses anymore unless we're trying to build them for cheaper costs, like things Habitat for Humanity. But promote ecotourism to protect natural areas and to discourage tree harvesting. This is what I forgot to talk about. I knew I was forgetting something. So with this, FRQ, describe one realistic strategy to reduce deforestation in less developed country. If you know of a strategy that another country uses to reduce deforestation or some law or act that they use to help, use that. Cite that as your reasoning. Make sure that you have that to help strengthen your response. Because if you're describing it and you say, this method has already worked in Costa Rica, for example, that last bullet point, promote ecotourism to protect natural areas, Costa Rica does that. You realize that Costa Rica is a developing country just like Haiti, but Costa Rica gets, I believe the statistic was $150-something million a year in tourism. So many people come from around the world to see their beautiful rainforests and their colorful birds and their monkeys climbing all over San Jose and their beautiful landscape, their beautiful undisturbed natural habitat. They promote ecotourism so much to Costa Rica. There are tons of US I don't even know, like thousands of US visitors every year to Costa Rica. Like there are National Geographic tours of Costa Rica. Like they promote ecotourism, so nobody cuts down their forests because nobody dares prevent my country from making money off the people that had these. And what Costa Rica has actually done in laws is they have said, you know, citizens, I give you 1 acre of forest land, and I give you I think it was $2,500 a year, and you have to protect this 1 acre of forest land. Don't let it get deforested by companies, and make sure that tourists are able to see it and it looks beautiful and people can explore it on tours. So Costa Rica government pays people to protect their acre of forest or to protect their land. That's definitely a realistic strategy because a country does it, and you could use Costa Rica does this, and it works as an example in your description. Two more people have joined us. Welcome, Alondra. Welcome, Maribel. We're just going over a proposed environmental solution, FRQ. I hope you guys can catch the replay later and see what you've missed. But I have a few comments here from Tanya that I'll read right now. You said you can increase the number of industrial jobs to deter Haitians from cutting down trees. Would that work if I expanded on it? Yeah, maybe not say like industrial jobs, maybe just say create government subsidy programs for people to have artisan materials. Like there's a program that you can Google called Feed My Starving Children, which promotes artisan businesses in countries and repays them with free food and shipments to their places and gives them living wages so they don't have to do bad environmental things. And then Tawny said, like, the government gave an incentive for creation of companies that provide these jobs. Yeah, sure. That could be that third to last bullet point right here, if I could scroll over to it. Develop economic programs to, you know, this one right here that I'm not going to read because I'm probably going to say something wrong again. Because that's just how we're doing today. All right, so Part B says deforestation can affect water quality. Identify one change that can occur in the water quality of streams within a watershed that has been deforested. Explain how deforestation can lead to this change. So here, because you have these two verbs, you're probably going to get 1 point for identify, but it's probably going to be 2 points for the explanation, 1 point for a good explanation, and 1 point for the explanation being linked to the identify. I actually forgot what the number of points was, but that's my prediction. Does anybody besides Tanya, or maybe even Tanya, I don't care, have any ideas about how to answer the identify or explain? If you want to answer the identify in the chat, say like, denote I, dash, dash, blah, blah, blah. And then if you want to try to answer the explain with just less words, put E dash, blah, 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 blah. Okay, Zoe Richardson says turbidity of the water. Yeah, that could definitely be an identify one change that can occur. So you could have increased turbidity because, okay, so increased turbidity in water, increased levels of turbidity. So you could have a turbidity of up to 5 in water, 1 or 0 being like the clearest water, and 5 is the highest level of turbidity. So you could have a turbidity of 4 or 5 in these waters. That could be your identify. And then to explain that, you could go through and say, without trees, there is no large, tall, huge blockers to wind and water runoff erosion. When you have large rainstorms and all of the water comes into the area, you have a ton of soil runoff, and this water gets into the soil, and then it runs off in mudslides, and it becomes to the point where, you know, all of this different mud, soil, all of these nutrients are running off into the stream instead of being where they're supposed to be. These trees help stop the water from running off because they're these big giant blockers to the water movement, and with these trees gone, the water just flows freely down to the stream instead of being stopped by the tree. That's a very long and circular explanation, but I'm talking and not writing, so kind of, you know. All right, Tanya says a regulating process is water sanitation, which could be stopped with deforestation because the trees would absorb the muddy water. I'm thinking, yeah, sure. That's kind of like the turbidity example. You could use a similar explanation to what I use, but then connect it. You need to make sure you connect everything in your FRQs. You know, cause, effect, effect is a cause to another effect, to another effect, to another effect, you know, keep the circle of life going. But make sure you always connect everything in your FRQ. Yeah, at the end of that, just tack on muddy water does not taste good and has health problems. Tanya, you have no clue what turbidity is. Do you need me to explain turbidity again, or do you got it now after my explanation of the other FRQ? Put something in the chat so I can know. Got it. All right, thank you. Then I'm going to move on so we can keep going because we only have like 15, 20 minutes left in the stream. We've gone through a lot of stuff in the stream. It's a lot of strategies, a lot of tips. So, C, identify 2 environmental benefits other than those related to the quality of water of maintaining forest ecosystems. Anybody have any ideas for this one? Anybody have any ideas? While you're thinking of ideas, let's look at the rubric for the deforestation part B. Wow, Zoe, it's almost like you read the rubric. Increase in turbidity of the water. So lots of root structure, leaf litter, soil runoff and erosion. See, that's our linkage. But while you guys are thinking, yes, Tanya, we're on C now. But I'm just kind of explaining the rubric for part B while you guys are trying to think of what you could say for 2 environmental benefits other than water quality, so don't say turbidity. I'm just going to go through this. So the rubric says there are 2 points for this question. So there is a point for identifying, but there is another point for correctly explaining and linking. Usually in like more recent FRQs, there's going to be 1 point for linking and 1 point for explaining, but this year there was 1 point that you had to correctly explain and correctly link to get that point. See how it says the explanation point cannot be earned with correctly identifying? So if you don't have an identify that's on this list, even if you try to explain one of these well, not the right answer. Sorry, no dice. Okay, so I don't see any more responses for C. And because we don't have a lot of time, oh, I'm sorry. Zoe says flood resistance and an increase in organisms reliant on water. I kind of like flood resistance, I kind of like flood resistance. I don't love increase in organisms reliant on water. Maybe if you expand on that one a little bit more, I might like it more. Maybe. I don't know. I'm sorry. I just don't understand. Maybe rephrase it. Tanya says maintaining forest ecosystems protects the habitats of animals that use the birds and branches of trees for nest. I like that one. Their habitat degradation. So because I'm trying to go through this quicker now, 2 environmental benefits other than those related to water quality. Maintains habitats, biodiversity. Tanya, that's what you said. Where I feel like flood prevention was on the reason. I swear that I saw it as a reason I was making these slides. Give me 1 second. Oh, but while I'm looking for it on the rubric, there's 2 points, 1 for identifying each environmental benefit, but they're only going to accept your first responses for each. So don't write 3 environmental benefits because you want to be safe. They're not going to grade the 3rd one. They're only going to grade the first 2. Like, even if your first 2 are awful, but then you write 2 awesome ones, you know. Nutrient cycle. So nutrient cycle could be about, no, because this one says other than those related to water quality. So they're really trying to shy away from water. With nutrient cycles, they want hydrologic is a biogeochemical cycle, but they really want you to think more of nitrogen, phosphorus, you know, along the lines of eutrophication, you know, fertilizer, cow poop runoff into streams, carbon sinks, things like that. Floods would be covered under reducing erosion. I just thought of that because floods pick up runoff water and soil things, so yeah, they reduce erosion. So here we have, moving on to the next part of the FRQ. So now we're going back to examining more information about Haiti. So now we're no longer in Unit 5 topics, we're in Unit 3. Notice how, I think I closed the CED. Crap, you're kidding me, right? Whatever. We can go back to that slide, actually. Right here. Notice how I highlighted that Unit 3, Human Population Dynamics for Environmental Solutions, and a ton of things in Unit 5 for Environmental Solutions. Funny how those things appeared on this FRQ. Funny. Very interesting, you know. Identify and discuss a factor in a less developed country that would contribute significantly to a change in life expectancy, similar to what occurred in Haiti from 1995 to 2015. So, what's a factor? So we saw that increase in life expectancy as time went on. So as time increased, as the x-axis increased on a graph, the y-axis also increased. So let's, I don't have something that can be used. So, you kind of just see a line like this that goes whoop, this way. As time increased on the x-axis and as the life expectancy increased on the y-axis, you have a line like this if you had to graph data. More education and jobs for women. Yeah, medicine, birth control, more education for jobs and women. You could talk about, so those are great identifies, but maybe you could talk about for discuss. You could talk about things like access to family planning, education for women. You could talk about moving through the demographic transition model. If you've taken human geography or if you talked about that in APES, demographic transition model is always a great discuss factor. You could talk about the stages. You could talk about all sorts of things. So let's look at the rubric. Nope, wrong page. Rubric. So we have increased access to healthcare. That's going to be like increased access to medicine, increased access to birth control. So that means that fewer deaths from treatable diseases, prevention of early death by getting vaccines. Yeah, so we're increasing life expectancy. Then we also have fewer pregnancies. That could also be related to contraceptives. And then we have fewer children, resulting in like a lower child death rate, a child mortality rate, lower infant mortality rate. There could also be increased health education, increased education on family planning. Then we have better sanitation, less disease transmission. That could definitely be referenced talking about demographic transition model, epidemiologic transition model. Those are definitely reasons that could be identified. And the last section, woohoo, we're there, except my toolbar went over it. But it says, identify and discuss one economic or cultural factor in a less developed country that could contribute. And I moved, and it turned the thing back on. Tanya, yes, you're correct. It says, identify and discuss one economic or cultural factor in a less developed country that could contribute significantly to a change in the fertility rate, similar to what happened, blah, 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 blah. So here, we see that as time increased on the x-axis, our value on the y-axis decreased. So we're going to have a line that looks like this, where it goes from, a line that looks like this. This is the y-axis, this is the x-axis. So when we have earlier times, we're going to have a high y-axis, and when we have later times, we're going to have a low y-axis. So we see that our fertility rate decreased. So any reasons for that? Hint, hint. These reasons could be very, 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 very similar to the reasons that you guys just gave. While I get some water. Okay, so let's break up this question a little bit more while you guys are still thinking. I see one response, but I'm not going to read it yet. I'm going to try not to read it. We're going to put my hand up so I can't see the chat. All right. So it says, identify and discuss one economic or cultural factor. Economic means money. Cultural means culture, religion, things like that. Make sure that when they say economic and cultural, don't reference something that's social. Don't reference the crude birth rate going down, because that's not an economic or cultural factor. An economic factor could be the gross domestic product, GDP, increases. A cultural factor could be that less people practice XYZ religion, so now they accept birth control more in their society. You have to connect it to something that's economic or cultural. Think about spiced tea, things like that if you've ever taken WAP. Is medicine social? No. No, medicine is medical. You could relate it to things. You could say cultural is about like religions, think culture, folk culture, things like that. You could think about how, the religion of Medicine best falls under medical things. They would say give one medical factor. So I'm going to go read the earlier responses now. So Tanya says financial support is an economic good identification factor that make families not feel as in need of more people in the family to bring in more money. Yeah, so you could talk about how if we give incentives for having less children, which is called an antinatalist policy, if you want to use a vocab word, encouraging people to have less children by giving them money, we could decrease our birth rate and decrease our fertility rate. If we have giving families less money, then these families don't need to have a ton of children to go work their agricultural fields. And less developed countries have a lot of people in agricultural fields that are working. They're not very industrialized. So we have a lot of families that are agricultural. So if we give them money, then they don't need to have a lot of children to go work in the fields because they're getting some money. Zoe says there's less food to go around, less medicine. Also, could preferring one gender over another result in yes. Okay, so think about China's one-child policy back in that they enacted in the 1900s, 1970s, 80s, whatever. China's one-child policy made a lot of families do things called honor killings. Not a great thing. So in Chinese culture, in Chinese social hierarchies, they have a gender stereotype that the family name and the family traditions and the family culture is passed down through the patrilineal, line. They don't pass it down through females. They only pass their family down through males when they get married and mate with females. So the female's kind of, the wife is kind of adopted by the male in Chinese culture. So if these, women got pregnant with girls and they could only have one child, a lot of them would have abortions, or a lot of them would kill their children after birth because the girls couldn't pass down the family name. The girls couldn't pass down the family tradition. So a lot of people wanted to have boys as their one child. So if you say preferring one gender over the other, like in India, China, a lot of sub-Asian countries prefer boys, as kids because they want to pass down the family name. They want to pass down the family traditions, all of that jazz. And that could definitely be a cultural factor because that's, the culture of some of these places. They killed girls in order to have boys. Tanya also says India prefers boys for land and girls for money because land stays in the family name. Yeah, kind of similar. So preferring gender, honor killings, those could definitely be cultural factors. So let's go look at the rubric. This is our last question, guys, and you made it. Here we have identify and discuss one economic or cultural factor. Decrease in fertility rate. So what do we have? Increased education of women. That could be a cultural factor. If you say that women are under less stringent cultural regulations by men to not be educated, but it could be an economic reason if you say increased free and available education for women. As long as you bring up something about money or the absence of money, then it can become an economic thing. Let's see, more economic opportunities for women. A later marriage age for women. This one's a cultural one. Get rid of the cultural traditions that say you have to marry at 13. Cultural acceptance of family planning strategies. This is how you could make medicine into a social, cultural reason. If you say cultural acceptance of birth control of contraceptives. Increased women's rights and gender equality, empowerment of women. So what did we have? We had preferring one gender, so that could definitely fall under increased women's rights, equality of women. And then we have industrialization, so children are no longer an asset. That's the thing about giving them money. More economic opportunities for women. This could count as the giving people money to have less babies. And I think that's covered what we've said. And now we're to the end of the FRQ. Good job, guys. We made it. All right. So do you guys have any questions about this FRQ writing in general? I'm only going to stay on the stream for like 5-10 more minutes because I do still have other school work to do. Ugh, school, I know, right? But do you guys have any FRQ questions specifically about that FRQ? I can go back. Anything that you guys, any feedback? Any questions about that FRQ? I'm assuming one-child policies are not considered a solution because then there will be more elderly than working class. Yeah, in the rubric, actually, I think that they talked about more social programs to support elderly. So, you know, one-child policies, they're going to decrease the birth rate. So, yeah. I don't, Zoe says, I don't have any, but thank you for hosting. Much appreciation. Yes, thank you guys for coming, too. Yes, I really hope that I helped. If I didn't, well, that's definitely tough. That's definitely very tough. Let me see. Here's the graphic again about like what the FRQs are going to be. Yes, thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for saying thank you. I guess that's a you're welcome. Not really sure about that. Actually, let me make this graphic bigger for you guys so you guys can see it better. Hopefully this will make it bigger so you can actually see it in 5 seconds. There. Yeah, so also, Tanya says, will there be a 2018 FRQ practice also? Yes, there should be a, I'll go check the APES calendar right now, but next week on Wednesday, there's going to be a 2018 FRQ practice, and then in 2 Wednesdays, there's going to be a 2019 FRQ practice. I am hosting them both, I believe. I think that I am, yes. So, yep, the 2018 FRQ review is scheduled for April 29th at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, just like today, so it's exactly a week from now. So I hope you come to that one and the next one. So I'll try to make the format of this a little bit different, just so you guys can, you know, not do the same thing every time. But I hope you enjoyed the stream. Thank you guys for coming. I think I'm going to end now. Looks like we have 5, so same number, just new people. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming. Ooh, and make sure to do the community response thing. So I shared the how to get onto the APES community thing here. This thing. I shared with you how to get onto it. I linked the slides that I went over in today's stream that you can't see because I'm sharing this tab, not the window. But if you click on that link, like I just did, but I hate Crowdcast so much. I mean, I love Crowdcast. When you, if it pulls up again, if you click on this link right here, it'll open up this slide deck, and it says scroll down to slide 8. I posted there's a partial proposed environmental solution FRQ right here that you can, you know, work through. Put parts D and E right here on this community forum reply. You can say like D, blah, blah, E, blah, 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 you know, all that good stuff. But give me a good response, though, so I can actually grade something. I'll go through and grade those up until next Wednesday. I'll discuss any like trends that I saw that weren't good, that were good from me grading these. Hopefully you guys take the time to do it. I'll put the link to this page in the chat box again. Please save it. Please do it if you have some time. I would love to go through and grade some of your FRQs. But that's all that I have for you today. So thank you so much again for coming. I'm going to hop off the broadcast. I'll still be in the chat for a few minutes to answer any questions that you have. Make sure you save that link. But thank you guys so much for coming, and have a great day, and stay safe in quarantine.